All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming tonight to our August public meeting. We do these meetings quarterly, so it's great to see some new faces here and some old faces, of course. So I'm Lisa Gassaway. I'm the new chair of the Montalvo District 6 Community Council. We have a great meeting tonight for everybody. We have Ventura Police Department stepped up and brought us 3 presenters on some great issues, so I think you're going to enjoy that. We also always do public comment now, so if anyone has any topics that aren't on the agenda but they'd like to bring them up to the community, they can ask the presenters. Even ideas for upcoming meetings, you'll have your moment to ask those questions. And tonight is also a meeting where we are going to vote on one issue, and that is we're changing our name. We have been affectionately known as MCC, the Montalvo Community Council, but we encompass all of District 6, so we are doing a slight change so that we really represent the wider audience. So that being said, our agenda is up here, and Cassie, I think part of it's covered, but you can see that we're gonna start with Commander Kane, as always. He brings us all the statistics, the crime statistics for our specific district. So we'll go ahead and get started with you, Matt. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. We're going to, Matt Douglas, our emergency manager, will be right back. He went to get a clicker for the PowerPoint, and then Dave Curtis, one of our motor officers, is going to talk about e-bikes. So I'm going to go through, I only have 10 minutes, but I'm going to go through the statistics, and then probably a little quicker than normal. That way we give enough time. We want to kind of be cognizant of everyone's time. So again, I'm Matt Kane. My full-time job, I'm the commander for professional standards for the police department. So mostly hiring, recruiting, work comp stuff. That's my full-time job. Several years ago, Chief Schindler assigned commanders to districts. So I am your District 6 commander. I've been that for, ever since I've been the commander, so over 4 years. So anything I talk about in this, you can, and you have questions, and if I don't touch on something that, that you want to, I'm available by phone, by email. You have full access. So, like I said, as I get through it, if there's any questions and we don't have time, you can always reach out to me. So, we do a breakdown, and remember, a long time ago, we went from the UCRs, the Universal Crime Reporting, to the NIBRS, which is the national database. So every single thing is reported. So as you look at something like assault or the drug or narcotics or larcenies are so high because every crime is reported. Anything that comes to your districts that comes in as a reported crime gets put on there. We never did report before anything narcotic related. So what that is when people get arrested for anything narcotic related in your district or something gets reported, it gets put into NIBRS. So that's why the numbers are really kind of look high. If you look on basically your map with the dots, you can see kind of in the Montalvo area, there's a little less than when you go like you're down Callens and Maine and Donlin there in the industrial areas. So in the summer months, we are going to have an uptick in general crime. People are out, people are doing stuff. Going through this, I didn't see any patterns, so to speak, and that's a good thing. We look at our burglaries, and there's 6 here reported, but they're all commercial burglaries, meaning from businesses. Where we kind of dive deep in the residential ones is where we get a little bit more concerned with residential burglaries. So that's a plus. Again, as far as hotspots, I didn't notice any hotspots for stolen vehicles either. They were kind of random in the district. We had no catalytic converter thefts, which is a plus. When we dive into the 44 thefts, the majority of those are all because we have a mass amount of commercial and commerce in this district, and the mass majority of those are all shoplifts and petty thefts, and they get reported in there. The robberies are the same thing. We did not have any strong arm robberies where someone's assaulted on the street at knife point or gunpoint. These are basically shoplifts that turned into robberies. So basically, I'm shoplifting, and then I get approached usually by loss prevention, and then I use force or fear on loss prevention, and I leave. The police arrest me. You get arrested for robbery that way. And then again, the narcotic offenses are up. They're at 20, which, like I said, they tend to trend high. It's a big district, and we do make several arrests, which I've explained before too. A lot of the narcotic arrests we do make, and for possession and paraphernalia and stuff, those are quality of life things where if we go out and it's happening in front of us, our officers are instructed to make arrests on that. So we get to the assaults. Going through all those, like I said, I'm not going to categorically go through each and every one, but the mass majority of those, and this trends normally not just in our district, but they're domestic violence related. Whether they're misdemeanors or felonies, the mass majority of those are domestics. And then I dive in deeper on those, and we used to just report felonies, but now we report any violence. So a misdemeanor battery, a misdemeanor, some sort of misdemeanor assault, all gets categorized in there. And if going through these, the felonies were the minority, and I have a lot of the misdemeanor assaults. We respond to a battery, a person-on-person, and someone wants prosecution, or they both want prosecution, then we'll cite and release, or someone may go to jail for it. So the animal cruelty I did look into, and we made an arrest on that. That was an individual right here at Ralston, Cypress, that was observed by a witness abusing his dog, and officers responded. They put it together, and he actually had a little rope on him that he was using, and he was arrested, and animal control took the dog. So I did look into that one, and that was an arrest that was made. When we go I'll go real quick from the last, we'll jump from May, and then in June, and then July. So our assaults are about normal. We had 27, and respectively in May, 22, and then the June period was 16. The burglaries, we jumped up a little bit to 6, although back from May to mid-June there was only 4, but from June to mid-July there was 10. Counterfeits, forgeries, we had none. Vandalisms, we trended about the same, like 10, 10, and then 13. Narcotics were actually down a little bit. Embezzlements, we had 0. Frauds were about the same. The thefts were actually down in. Motor vehicle thefts, again, up, but no trends there. And the robberies, like I said, we had the 3. And the weapons law violations, we had none. So again, as a time issue, I'm going to stop there, and then real quick, any questions on the stats? Yes?
I read something in the paper about Supreme Court with the laws about whether you can arrest somebody for being on the street if there isn't a bed for them, that's gone away.
Yes.
And Newsom is like, we need to do more to clean this up. How is that going to affect Ventura?
So we're already, we have our quality of life municipal codes and penal codes that we're already starting to trend back to take enforcement on those. The biggest thing would be our chronic offender program, where after 5 or more offenses with the same person in a certain time period, they can actually go to jail instead of getting a ticket. So we are back in line with what's happening throughout the state. So taking enforcement action on individuals when enforcement is appropriate. It's a good question.
Also, I put in some online forms about some cars that were abandoned on my street, and within a week they were gone. I don't know if that was a coincidence.
Yeah, see, we did our job.
Do you know
It does get, those do, our traffic desk up front, they do get monitored. We sent the cadets out, and what we'll do is we'll mark for whatever is appropriate, whether the car's been there or the 72 hours or however it is, and then if they roll back out and it's still there, they'll get towed.
What's the magnitude, what's the magnitude of the commercial burglaries and thefts compared to other business districts like downtown or something?
Well, we have a big district, so we tend to, and we have a lot of commerce and stuff in this district, so we tend to trend higher. I mean, all the way down Victoria and all the businesses, and again, everything gets reported. So we're high, but it's not. It's a big district, so we encompass a lot of businesses. Yes.
I have kind of a follow-up on the first question. When you come across somebody who is homeless, who's unhoused, and there isn't a bed for them, or maybe there is a bed for them, what's the process? If there is a bed,
The
how do we get to that bed? If there isn't a bed, what happens?
the number one thing is to try and get them services. If they want the services, then we'll try and give them services. We even have the authority to, our patrol task force unit will, if they're from out of the city, and they have an individual, like a relative that will take them, that say Simi Valley or somewhere, and everyone's willing, they just ended up here inadvertently, we'll take them home. And then we go from there. In the end, we won't just leave them. We'll try and get them services. If there's a criminal offense and it's ongoing, then there's likely that they're going to get arrested. But the number one thing first would be services, and we do have all kinds of services in the city. So if someone's in our district but the services are somewhere else, we'll take them there. We'll call resources to the scene and try and get them assistance. Yes, sir.
That's okay, go ahead. Thefts and so forth, you see on TV, probably more in Los Angeles, smash and grabs and coordinated groups of people who probably run their text messages and they say, let's all send on one place at one time. Is that happening in Ventura at all?
We haven't had an incident, I know what you're talking about, like that in a long time. And then a lot of times we'll get notified of these crews that are working different areas, and then we'll put detectives in those areas like undercover to try and combat it. But no, we haven't had an incident like that in a long time.
Okay, and I have a second question. I forget which proposition that was 5-6 years ago. Was it Prop 47, where if you steal up to $900, you just get a citation? Is that the
So,
proposition that?
well, penal codes have changed as far as what's a misdemeanor and what's a theft. As far as, what's a misdemeanor and what's a felony as far as theft. So yeah, and we have to go on those guidelines. It used to be a lot less than it is now.
And I know you can't get too political, but are there any California propositions on the November ballot that seek to remedy that?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't done a deep dive on it.
All right.
Just an observation, it looks like the Winco area is popular with drugs.
Yes. Yeah, that's there's a lot of dots on the map there. Yes, sir.
I was trying to figure out what that was, right above Goodyear? Is the Winco parking lot?
General area, yeah.
All right, any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commander Kane. We really appreciate you keeping us informed. So the next speaker is going to be Emergency Evacuation Manager Mac Douglas, and he's going to talk to us about what to do in an emergency situation in our district. Thank you.
Looks like it's working. Did you just click it, Mr. Douglas?
Yes, it is.
Oh, great.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. I'm here tonight to share the high points of the city's emergency evacuation plan. I'll start by explaining the driving force behind this project. Some of the geography that makes Ventura a great place to live also poses a potential hazard to life and property. We're bounded by the Pacific on one side with the coastal foothills on the other, and we have rivers that are prone to flooding on the north and south. The challenges faced during evacuations related to the Thomas Fire brought this into crystal clear focus for many of our residents, including, I'm willing to bet, maybe some folks here tonight. The lack of pre-planning also haunts several of my colleagues who were on duty in 2017 and were involved in this project. We recognize that because of climate change-driven impacts to weather cycles, events that call for emergency evacuations or mass evacuations are only going to become more frequent. City Council took all of these factors into consideration when they made enhanced evacuation planning public education a goal. It is my sincere hope that this plan will be effective in achieving the Council's goals, but also ultimately serve to save lives. The scope of this plan includes an all-hazards approach to mass evacuations. This plan is also intended to be easy for the public to digest while still being an effective tool for incident commanders to visualize areas and populations that they may need to evacuate. Working further down the line, it helps those of us who will be working in the Emergency Operations Center understand and anticipate sheltering needs. Much of what we'll talk about when we get to discussing the evacuation zones in detail will seem obvious or common sense as we sit here in this room, and it is. However, in the event that we are faced with a rapidly evolving incident, having that common sense written down, illustrated, and having a mutual understanding in place between first responders and the public will be key to limiting chaos. As I touched on earlier, Ventura is directly in the crosshairs of a near complete cross-section of natural and man-made disasters. We're overdue for a significant earthquake. The Thomas Fire was only a few years ago, but the heavy rains that we've had for the last 2 years have grown quite a crop of vegetation in our wildland-urban interface zone, and I'm sure that wet weather won't last forever. Those same rains cause flooding and raise landslide concerns, especially on the west side. While we can't rely on the rain to keep the fuel moisture levels high forever, it seems likely that we can expect more major rain events like those that we saw in February of this year and also throughout the winter of last year. We also have a railroad that is used to transport potentially hazardous materials through the city, as well as numerous sites throughout the city that store significant quantities of hazmat. We've even had to take hurricanes into our planning as a result of recent experience. One of the first things that we looked at as part of the planning process was the demographics of our city. A significant portion of our residents, approximately 1/3, are somewhere between economically disadvantaged and below the poverty line. Why does that matter for evacuation planning? It matters because people who have the resources to provide for their own sheltering needs during an evacuation do so in statistically significant numbers. Maybe they stay in a hotel or they have friends or family with the space to take them in. Folks who aren't as well resourced are likely to need to take advantage of any sheltering sources we, the city, can provide. We also took at our elderly and disabled populations. Those folks may need extra time and assistance to evacuate, as well as sheltering accommodations. Nearly 1 in 5 of our residents are over 65, and while many of those folks are in better shape than I am, many of them are not. Nearly 10% below the age of 65 have some kind of disability, and again, while many of those folks don't actually need much in the way of accommodations, there are certainly those that do. After collecting demographic information and matching those numbers with the areas that are most susceptible to likely incidents, we were able to form a clearer picture of the numbers of folks we may need to evacuate. With those evacuation numbers in hand, we were able to understand the scope of sheltering requirements related to evacuations for a given event. The County Human Services Agency nominally has responsibility for sheltering operations throughout the county, and they do a fantastic job. However, their resources, like any agencies, are finite. As a community, we can no more expect County HSA to ride to the rescue than we can anybody else. The preparation of this plan actually coincided with a number of improvements to our sheltering readiness, including the pre-positioning of a County HSA shelter supply trailer at VPD headquarters, and that stands ready to set up initial operations at the county's pre-sited temporary evacuation point, which is located at Ventura College, or to support sheltering operations at the county fairground. The city also entered into an agreement with the Ventura Unified School District to use school sites to host shelters in times of need. In addition, there are a number of city facilities, including West Park and Community Park, which most of us know as Kimball Park, that we are working with County HSA to establish memorandums of understanding that would enable the County HSA to use those facilities to stand up additional county evacuation points as needed. A key part of our planning process also involved working with our consultant to reach out to community stakeholders. We directly interviewed personnel and outside agency representatives that we anticipate working directly alongside in the event of a mass evacuation and sheltering scenario. Collaboration with the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services proved especially fruitful, as they're working on a similar countywide evacuation plan. By working closely with them, we ensured that their plan will dovetail with ours. When their plan is finalized, we plan to integrate their evacuation zones into our plan as an annex. The result will be a plan that offers more flexibility to incident commanders while still retaining both planning and operational consistency. We also made a strong put to solicit input from the community. A public survey was made available in English and Spanish late last year and received nearly 1,000 responses. Much of the feedback that we received made its way directly into this plan. Many folks shared their experiences from the Thomas Fire, and it was made crystal clear to us that one of the things we needed to improve most was our communication with the community before, during, and after an incident, which is one of the reasons that I'm here tonight. As the plan progressed toward a final draft state, we made a concerted effort to share the plan with the community and solicit further input, including presentations at community councils and hosting an evacuation plan workshop in May. Before we move on, we should take a minute to talk about, in general terms, what is in the 100-plus page evacuation plan document and what isn't. The written plan includes a lot of technical details that are critical to implementing the plan. These include, but are not limited to, an outline of the legal authority that underpins the plan and the city's ability to order an evacuation, detailed hazard risk profiles for all of the zones, breakdowns of roles and responsibilities for different agencies that we're likely to partner with during an evacuation event, procedures for issuing evacuation warnings and orders, plans for evacuation reentry, for post-evacuation reentry and repopulation, appendices with recommended steps that folks with access and functional needs can take to improve their own readiness, and restricted use annexes that will not be publicly available that detail force levels that will be required to effectively execute traffic control, assuming the availability of both lead time and resources through mutual aid. The plan also contemplates contraflow traffic patterns and concludes that, in most cases, contraflow will increase the amount of traffic control resources required to execute an evacuation safely and has inherent risks that will need to be weighed by an incident commander before he or she selects contraflow as a method to implement an evacuation. The plan does not advocate for or against any specific piece or pieces of infrastructure, as one of the constraints on the process was working within conditions on the ground as they are today, not as I or anyone else might like them to be. In my mind, this is not the end of better disaster preparedness in Ventura, but the beginning. With that said, let's move on to the maps. When we set out to break the city up into more manageable evacuation zones, our thinking was guided by a number of factors, including, in no particular order, the county's draft zones, neighborhood characteristics, meaning we tried not to break up communities or HOAs, arterial and collector routes, major freeways, number of lanes available, potential choke points, population density, and areas that are similar to susceptible threats. For example, it doesn't make sense to lump Pierpoint and Ondolando into the same zone, even though they're on the same latitude, because the hazards that are likely to impact them are very different. This brings us to the overall city map. There are 15 zones in total, but it is worth noting that Zone 15 covers an area that's north of the city where Ventura's water production infrastructure is located. Zone 15 is, for all intents and purposes, uninhabited. The other 14 zones represent the best breakdown we could come up with, taking all of the factors we just talked about into account. I do have a time limit this evening, so I will be focusing on the zones that comprise District 6. Zone 10 lies between the 101 and 126 interchange to the west, Pettit Avenue on the east, State Route 126 to the north, and Telephone Road to the south. Approximately 10,000 people call this zone home. This zone is fairly centrally located and is consequently less susceptible to some hazards like landslides and tsunamis. However, there are still threats related to wildfire and flood present due to the presence of Harmon Barranca. Because of Zone 10's location, numerous evacuation routes exist. In most cases, we would be looking to use Victoria, Kimball, in Montgomery to move people to the 101, 126, or Telephone Road and then away from danger. It is likely that a full evacuation of Zone 10 would have folks moving in more than one direction to take advantage of the large number of available route options. Zone 11 is a bit of a strange animal. It's broken down into two lobes by a piece of unincorporated county land that lies south of the 101 and Bristol Road. Zone 11 is primarily industrial. The population of record is only 500 people, but during business hours that is far, far higher. Due to the zone's proximity to the Santa Clara River, it does face hazards related to flooding and dam breach. Also, it has a higher instance of hazardous materials storage, which correlates to a higher risk of hazmat release. The main evacuation thoroughfares running north and south are Telephone Road and Victoria Avenue. While technically outside of city limits, Olivas Park Drive is the primary east-west evacuation route. In most circumstances, we would be looking to use our north-south route options to move people toward US 101 or out of the city using Victoria and Olivas Park to harbor. And I'll make this presentation available so you guys can review it at your leisure. I realize I'm under a time limit this evening. Rounding out District 6 is Zone 12, which includes most of Montalvo. It's home to 15,800 people, which makes it the largest zone in the city by population. It's bounded by Telephone Road to the north, 101 to the west, Ramelli Avenue and County Unincorporated area to the east, and to the south by the railroad. As it is also close to the Santa Clara River, it has exposure to the same flooding and dam breach hazards as Zone 11, and also shares wildfire and flood threats because of the presence of Harmon Barranco. Like Zone 10, Zone 12's relatively central location means that it has multiple evacuation route options. In general, we'd be using Johnson and Victoria to move people towards either the 101 or 126, and using Telephone Road and Ralston to move people east and west. The dividing line would most likely be Victoria Avenue, with the easterly part of the zone moving in one direction and the westerly part of the zone moving in another. The plan also identifies the locations of sites that might be used as shelter locations and evacuation assembly points. There's an important distinction between these functions. Shelters are places for people to stay and will provide a place to sleep and other resources as necessary. Evacuation assembly points are designed to be points of departure in the event of a citywide evacuation or for folks who do not have their own transportation. So all of the dots on there are potential shelter locations. Those are the school sites that we have been allowed to use via that agreement with the school district. The blue dots on there are evacuation assembly points. These are areas that have large parking lots that can then easily accommodate large, buses from VCTC or other transportation outfits to move large number of people out of the city quickly. It's also important to understand evacuation terminology. An evacuation warning means that we believe an evacuation may be necessary in the near future. An evacuation order means that it is time to leave now in the best interest of your safety and that of others. A shelter in place means that you should prepare to stay where you are until the danger is past and take steps to fortify your position if possible. I have pictures of pizza up there because my 8-year-old asked me to explain this to her. And the best thing I could come up with was, if we have ingredients for a pizza, we're talking about an evacuation warning. We have the pieces of a problem, but it's not here yet, just like we have the ingredients, but we don't have a pizza. An evacuation order means that pizza is done, it's coming out of the oven, and it's ready to eat. And a shelter-in-place order means I hope that we have some pizza in the freezer. So how you can help. Going back for a moment to the community feedback that helped drive this plan and the public outreach and education effort that we've undertaken, we understand that communication is key before, during, and after an incident. Every time I speak to the public, I beg folks to sign up for VC Alert because it is the best tool that I have to communicate with all of you in the event of an emergency. If you guys aren't signed up for it, it's vcalert.org. I won't be offended if you pull out your phone and sign up for it now. So this plan was presented to City Council, and they voted to adopt it on July 16th of this year. Council also directed us to explore additional alert and warning options because as good as VC Alert is, it does have a vulnerability in that it is cell phone and email based. We're currently pursuing a request for information for what the design and build out of a citywide alert siren system would look like. I don't think that there are plans to actually move forward with that at this point because that would be massively expensive. It would need to be a capital improvement project that would take some time, but we are starting the wheels turning on that. Council also asked us to prepare a framework that community councils and other community groups can use to set up their own disaster response and preparedness teams. We do have a CERT program through the police department that has been wildly popular, but there's a hard limit to how many people we can push through that at any given time. So we're working on adapting the best programs that other jurisdictions have established into one that will work for Ventura. As soon as the draft has been finished, we'll be reaching out to community councils, including this one, and other groups for their input and ideas. So please stay tuned for more information on that. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about CERT, I'm really glad you brought it up, I took it, it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen any ads for it lately, so I wasn't sure if you were still doing it. So I'm glad that's being done. I have a question and I have a comment. My comment is, I moved here from out of state, not long before the Thomas fire. And I want to commend your department and all your first responders, because while I understand the response wasn't perfect, it was so far superior to what I was used to in another state, that anytime I hear anybody complaining, I always turn around, even if I don't know them, and tell them, compare this to how it's done elsewhere. It was amazing. VC Alert was great. Calling the emergency information office that I think was through the sheriff's department, I
Mhm.
remember, to find out what was happening and, how was it progressing. It was amazing. I felt so supported. It was just great. So commendation, commendation, commendation. I also wrote that to city government. The question is, during the Thomas fire, people with certain disabilities were turned away from the public shelters. An example is someone on oxygen was not allowed, the evacuation center at the fairgrounds turned this person away because oxygen was a hazard perhaps, I don't know. And I'm wondering what accommodations are being considered in this current plan to accommodate people with mobility issues, needing oxygen, maybe having an emotional support dog.
Of course. The question was, during the Thomas fire, certain people with disabilities were turned away from shelter locations, and the question was, what are we doing differently now to make those accommodations for people with functional needs or emotional support animals? State law changed to require shelters to be made available for people with animals and pets and those sort of considerations. One of the groups that we reached out to as part of building this plan out was the County Disability Access Office. So in the plan, there's an annex that provides steps that people with disabilities can take to improve their own readiness, but as far as sheltering, we're not really legally allowed to turn people away anymore. So it's not something that I think anybody wanted to do in 2017. It's something we legally can't do now. Does that adequately answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
It does, and you'll be making accommodations for the people who will need.
Correct. We may not be able to take them at one shelter or another shelter, but there will be a shelter available somewhere that can accommodate those needs.
And will you be responsible for transporting them to a shelter that would be appropriate?
I don't know that VPD will be responsible for doing it, but one of the agencies that we'll be working with, most likely County HSA, would be responsible for providing that transport. In the event that County HSA isn't able to do so, the city would make resources available to make that happen.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yes, sir.
Zone 12, that's most of what we think of as Montalvo area.
Yeah.
The red dot, I'm guessing that the shelter location, that red dot in zone 12 is Portola Elementary School?
I believe that's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, that's the county government center.
Is this information on your website?
It is. The entire plan's available on the website, and there's also a neat feature in the upper right-hand corner where if you type in your address, it'll show you what zone you're in, and we also have the draft zones from the county there, so it's all available online.
VenturaPD.org.
Yeah, venturapd.org, and then if you look up emergency services, you'll find the emergency evacuation plan. If you Google Ventura evacuation plan, it's your first result.
Can you just repeat that about where the shelter is and the bus stop?
So Zone 12 has a shelter location at Portola Elementary, and then the evacuation assembly point is the county government center.
We have had concerns in terms of Johnson Drive being a main place for an evacuation,
Mhm.
especially with all of the housing that is planned for that area currently as well as in the future. And then in addition to that, just the on and off ramps, the difficulty in moving traffic through that area. Did you guys discuss that at all?
We discussed it, but as I outlined, that one of the constraints on the plan is that we have to plan for things as they are. Would I love to have an additional lane or rearrange some of those on-ramps and off-ramps to make things easier? Yes, I absolutely would, but for the purposes of making an implementable evacuation plan, I mean, I can put together a wish list, but it really doesn't move the needle.
Okay, all right. Well, that helps to know that you've taken into consideration, because we're working with our councilman, and I believe in an upcoming meeting, he's gonna have Caltrans here to answer our questions and concerns on that.
Your concerns are shared by folks throughout the city. The west side is concerned about Stanley the Stanley on-ramps. It's an issue where the city has outgrown the infrastructure, and the infrastructure hasn't grown with the city, and especially for things like highway on-ramps and off-ramps, it's something that's not within the city's direct purview to make changes to. Thank you all. One more?
Yes, when you say those citywide sirens are massively expensive, like to what degree, what is that in dollar value? And like if you could have one, like, would it really be that beneficial for the city?
We're putting together an RFI to figure out exactly what those costs would look like, but just a broad estimate, I would say to cover the entire city, and assuming we'd probably need new poles, new power supplies for all of this, we're easily into seven figures with significant annual maintenance costs to be added on to that. Do I think it's a benefit? Yes, I do think it would be a benefit. Is the juice worth the squeeze? That's something that our electeds have to make a decision on. There is an identified weakness in VC Alert. It works well 99% of the time, but there's a weakness that we're trying to give council options to solve. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your time and effort and consideration. We're really grateful for that. And we will also have this on our website, the Montalvo Community Council website, as well as the video of tonight's meeting. So the next up is electric bikes, which is a very hot issue right now. I'm sure we've all seen kids riding electric bikes without helmets on roads, and that makes us very nervous. So we're happy to have you tonight.
How's everybody doing this evening? Good. Are you getting the PowerPoint up? No worries. All right. Yeah. I apologize, I do move around a little bit, so I'll try to keep that under control. I'm trying to get this guy to work, but it's not seeming to do so.
Is your clicker not working?
No, it's not right now. Perfect, there we go. So I'll introduce myself. My name is David Curtis. I'm a corporal in the traffic unit. I was in traffic for 5 years beforehand, and I came back into the traffic unit in 2023. As the corporal, I was an officer in there before. The traffic unit's purpose for the city and the department is proactive enforcement of vehicle codes as they exist: speeding, seatbelts, lights, stop signs, those sorts of things, with an overall goal of reducing traffic collisions throughout the city, be that cars, pedestrians, bicycles, any combination of those items together. We do traffic collision investigations throughout the city that are significant injury or fatal collisions. We do full reconstructions, vehicle inspections, 3D analysis, you name it, we do the whole thing. Kind of like a major accident investigation team like CHP has. We provide recommendations to the city when we see high alert issues that exist, be it volume issues, collision frequency, adding in a stop sign, maybe a light at certain intersections. We have conversations and a pretty good relationship with the city's traffic and engineering to try to help minimize any of those crash rate issues and try to keep numbers down. We manage special events, X Games, Strawberry Festival, the fair, all of the marathons, triathlons that we have throughout the city. In total, there's about 13 different special events that the city has that we are a part of in some capacity every year. And then lastly, we do community education such as we're doing tonight. We hold workshops at the city, over at the police department. We may be holding one here in October at City Hall. But those are some of the things that we do. If you could skip to the next slide, please.
Want to try yours?
Yeah. There we go. Now she's working. All right, so while we're here tonight, we're working on an issue of an increased rate of crime, and the method of arrival and departure for some of those crimes are kids on e-bikes and even adults on e-bikes. The unsafe and illegal way in which they're riding these vehicles, and the increased community concerns, be it the safety of the kids, the general public. We enacted some municipal code in the downtown Main Street Moves area that prohibits people from riding their wheeled vehicles within that space. That includes adults as much as it does kids. And at the end of the day, it's a highly congested area. Foot traffic is a better option, and vehicular or mobile traffic, wheeled vehicles in that space is risky in general. So we're trying to keep all of those things down. Let's see, there we go. So what we've got here is some kids who have decided to post all of their efforts onto social media. These are videos that are pulled from their platforms specifically. We did not go pirating these. We did not capture them on our body-worn video. These are their freely shared to the general public things on their Instagram, Facebook, social media, you name it. As you can see, this looks like it's Ventura Avenue, riding down the center line. That's Main Street, approaching the high school. That's the, I call it small 5 points. They're at Lincoln and Main Street. All right. This is a large group of kids. I don't know exactly where they're at, but you can clearly see he's within the lanes of traffic, either impeding traffic or otherwise. That kid's indicating he's got a cracked frame on his bicycle. You can see the little hairline fracture there, which is risky in general. This vehicle that he's actually riding here on the left, back on Ventura Avenue, is actually basically an electric dirt bike. So you'd have to have a license, you'd have to have appropriate working headlamp, turn signals, brake lamps, you name it, the whole 9 yards. It's a motorcycle with an electric engine instead of a combustion motor. All right. So a lot going on here. Another variant of the e-dirt bike, Sur-Ron's Talarias. The whole reason we're here is just general safety, right? That's what this is all about. We're going to cover some different classifications, what electric dirt bikes and motorcycles are, state and local laws, and then education and enforcement. And in a conversation that I had just last week with a DMV investigator, even the DMV personnel are a little behind the curve with some of this stuff. As far as bicycles are concerned, so what a bicycle is, to put simply, is that it has to have a crank for pedaling purposes so that you can make it move by your own 2 legs, okay? Electric bicycles all have crank power and move in a number of ways with assistance by an electric motor. Class 1 bikes, you have to pedal them, and then the motor gives you a plus number of however much power you put into the pedal, all right? And you can change the settings. Class 2 bicycles You can pedal and then the motor will give you an assist in power, or you can just twist the wrist and it takes off based on a throttle input. Both of those vehicles will shut off and the motor will no longer supply speed to the vehicle once it hits 20 miles an hour. Okay? If they're going faster than 20, it's because they decided to give it a little effort and they're able to keep on cruising. Under 16, you can ride these. There's no limitation, there's no license requirement, none of that. They should all be wearing their helmets, obviously, for safety purposes, most of which we know don't, but we're trying to work on that too. Class 3, the difference between 2 and 3 is that Class 3 can make it up to 28 miles an hour. In a nutshell, that's the difference. You cannot ride a Class 3 bike if you are under the age of 16, and everybody on a Class 3 bicycle has to wear a helmet per law. Okay, so if I was on a Class 3 bicycle, I have to wear a bike helmet. Okay, I don't have to wear a DOT helmet like I would on my motorcycle, but I have to wear a bicycle helmet like I would if I was riding my mountain bike or my road bike. All right? And again, these vehicles, you can ride them anywhere throughout the city, bike paths, bike lanes, roadway. You can even ride them on a sidewalk. I am not a huge fan of that at all in any capacity when it comes to bicycles and anybody under, say, the age of like 14 or 12 for a number of reasons, but that's a different and lengthier conversation. Motorized bikes and other vehicles, we got motorcycles, motor-driven cycles, motorized bikes, mopeds, electric dirt bikes. Everything to the left minus the electric dirt bike requires licensures. Okay, so M1 motorcycle license or an M2 license, depending on which vehicle you're riding. Electric dirt bikes, most of those are designed in an off-highway capacity, just like your dirt bikes would be, and they have no purpose being on city streets at all. And county-wide, there is no off-highway area to ride a dirt bike within the county of Ventura. All of those areas exist north or east or south of us. So there's that. All right? And those electric dirt bikes will do 47 miles an hour right out of the box. Like, no questions asked. They just plug it in, make sure it's got juice, go. And they touted it being like a 4.5 second 0 to topped out time, which is really quick. Pocket bikes. I'm sure some of you have seen these floating around. There's a couple of crews down in like LA. They come up every now and again through PCH. They come into Malibu. These things, depending on how they design them, build them, whatever the case may be, they can go pretty quick. They even take over the freeways, do their little stunt shows, whatever. These are private property onlys. Can't ride these on the city streets anywhere in any capacity. There's a couple of vehicle codes that allow us to cite for these and to tow on site for these things because they have no business being on public roadways whatsoever. We've only seen like 1 or 2 of these throughout the city that I can even recall off the top of my head. So what we're doing to try to mitigate all these issues, first and foremost, we're trying to educate everybody. I know that's not up there necessarily, but that's the biggest thing we're trying to do because some of the education is even on our part trying to get versed in what these things are, where they align with the vehicle code, and how to deal with them. Enhanced patrol in the downtown area. We had a lot of guys go through bicycle training so that they could go into the downtown Main Street Moves area on bicycles and conduct enforcement through that area because I'm on a motorcycle, but I don't want to go riding a motorcycle through downtown Main Street Moves. It's bulky, it's big, it's noisy, it's stinky. It's a whole bunch of things that doesn't need to be in the downtown Main Street Moves area while people are trying to have lunch or just go out and have a nice day. So we put guys out there on bicycles to try to deal with those issues. That gets met with some resistance because people are like, well, why can you ride yours, but I can't ride mine? Well, there's some things written in the codes that allow the police to do certain things that the general public can't so that we can enforce the laws that we have all voted to have enacted. We issue citations depending on the circumstances and whatever it is that we're dealing with when we find it. The Surons and Talarias, we're just impounding those at this point because at the end of the day, they have no business being on the road. None of them are registered that we found so far, save 2 in the entire city. And those were inappropriately registered, so we're working on that too because they registered them as a moped, even though they're technically a motorcycle. We call parents to make sure that they're fully educated on what it is that kids should and shouldn't be riding, the safety issues that exist there. And in some cases, if the people decide to say, hey, I'm going to try and run away from the cops even though I can only do 45 miles an hour, we make arrests and we book people in juvenile hall or county jail. Just depends on what they decide to do that day. Some more examples of some of our efforts and how we've come across dealing with these things. We've scoped out some of the schools throughout town. Generally, it's the middle schools, not usually the high schools, because most of those kids have evolved on to riding or driving, you know, at that point. As you can see, some of these kids are actually repeat offenders, some folks that we've stopped more than once, because we were going through the educational phase of things, and then we moved into the enforcement side of things later on down the road. The one on the right's being loaded up on a tow truck and taken away. Other things that we're doing outside of all of that, we've got some dedicated pages on the City of Ventura's website regarding e-bikes. We've sent out mailers in the mail to every address. They either have arrived or should be arriving soon to everybody. We got a number of social media posts. I've personally sat down and done a podcast. I did a AM radio talk on this last Thursday. We've got things such as this. We call it a town hall meeting that we did a couple weeks ago before the fair started at the police department. And then we're doing another workshop sometime in October, depending on the volume of people that decide to show up for that. That may get moved to City Hall because we can live stream that too simultaneously and then record it on top of all that. And that's kind of it. So, yeah, the mailer, paid advertisement through various radio and newspaper threads. So, you guys have any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, downtown, on Saturdays, I go to a particular place out on the street, and it's not, I've noticed more recently, it's not as big of a problem, but there are people who do ride the bikes. And, a couple months ago, 3 months ago, there was kids on e-bikes. I haven't seen that as much. How is the situation downtown? Is it under control? Is there more that needs to be done?
The situ-
The city council passed the ordinance that says in Main Street moves, you can't ride a bike.
Right. So the question is the passing of the downtown Main Street moves and whether that situation is under control with the volume of people that are riding wheeled vehicles within that area, and more specifically directed toward electric vehicles within that area, right? So we were down there last week, actually, because I guess the volume has a tendency to tick up a little bit more when school's letting out, and the kids will utilize that as thoroughfare to pass through to get to the west end of the city. Oddly enough, what we found was, I think personally, I saw maybe a kid, okay? But what I saw a large volume of was adults who are not abiding to the signage that's posted in various locations that the city went to great lengths to establish, post, and make sure everybody's aware of. We spent a number of weeks down there just basically pointing out the sign and saying, hey guys, new municipal code that's been enacted, we've done social media releases, you name it. I think the reckless behavior has minimized, but the fact that people are still within that area and still doing what they're doing, until everybody buys into the idea that, hey, look, this is a designated pedestrian foot traffic sort of a space, minus, of course, people who need assistive mobilities and things of that nature. This is what this is. Just stay off your wheeled vehicles. You go to other cities that are coastal communities, and they have foot traffic only locations as well, and the communities have bought into that philosophy. And I think the sooner that we can get our entire community to buy into the philosophy of what that is and how to deal with it, then all of the issues that we've been seeing will be a lot less. Not to say that they will be completely gone, you know, because let's face it, kids are going to do what kids are going to do. But if the adults are showing a better example of behavior and buy-in with what we're trying to do within the city, then I think everything will just kind of fall into place a little better. Okay? Yes, sir.
So I was wondering if I can get the image of the one where you listed the 3 bikes, because I'm on the board at BUSD, and I think if we send that image out
It's
to
not, yeah.
Square,
I think so.
it was like the 3rd one.
Oh, one back. There you go. Yeah.
Because this is where the confusion happens.
Yes.
Right here.
I totally understand.
You know, we have just under 14,000 students, so I think if we got this out to the parents,
Mm-hmm.
and then you would have more enforcement, because they can be like, hey, listen, you're gonna get a ticket, or you can do this, so, I can give you my email address.
Okay. So we have this on our website. If not this exact slide, something very similar to this. So you can snag it on there. But I will absolutely take your email. I'll get you all the information. We don't have the specific vehicle codes as they exist to the helmet regulations, but yeah.
Yeah, just this part right here, because I didn't even know about the class 2 part, going to class 2 to class 3.
Yeah.
So our middle schoolers, have that loading at that McDonald's, and it's like 30 of them.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's all over. And technology can advance faster than legislation because bureaucracy kills speed, right? So everybody's trying to make a buck, so somebody's going to design the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and people are just going to buy it willy-nilly because parents got places to be. I'm a parent, like I got to take this kid over here and I got to take that kid over there, and I got to be there at the same place at the same time, So everybody's trying to get to places, but like there's a safe way to do it and a relatively reckless way to do it. And, with the education aspect, that's all we're trying to do and make sure that the kids are behaving accordingly. Yes?
Are you guys working with the city on getting more bike lanes? I know they've been trying to get more bike lanes across the city. Anything you think that would help with this issue?
That's a great question that I mean, somebody had asked that question to me about Victoria Avenue and how we would facilitate putting in a bike lane within that location. So adding bike lanes to the city is going to be a financial undertaking that we just don't have. And I don't even know if grants could approach that reasonably. Plus we have a volume issue, right? With, more residences, more people within the city and things of that nature. So as far as an infrastructure, Max said it earlier, we're significantly understaffed as far as infrastructure is concerned. So to tackle that is an enormous task to undertake. With what we have presently, I don't know how you would generate more bike lanes without majorly impacting traffic and congestion any more than has already been done. Short of a dedicated bike path that would take you from the complete east end to the complete west end that has no vehicular traffic crossing or otherwise within it, to minimize those issues, and then fingers that come off of that. But again, back to cost, it's going to be huge. And I don't know how or when that would be able to be tackled. So, yes, ma'am. Sorry.
So there's an issue in my neighborhood. I live that way. I live
Okay.
right here behind Vista Park. And there's a group of young people, and I don't know, these days anybody under 50 looks young to me. But I'm going to say they're probably high schoolers. They're definitely not middle schoolers. They might be 18, 19, 20. It's sort of in that range, 16, 18, 19. And I don't know which of those vehicles they're riding, but it is something heftier and faster than a regular bicycle. And they're out of control. They don't wear helmets, which as a parent and grandparent, that scares me. But also, they think it's hysterical to ride on the grass and dig deep grooves all over. And you can see them, those grooves that were made a month ago are still there. Is there anything that we can do to change that behavior? Is that, like, every time I see it, I call you 911, or like, what do we do? How can we make that better? Because these are kids who are putting themselves in danger. They're putting me in danger when I'm walking my dog. When they do ride in the street, they're all over the street. They're just having fun. And like you said, kids will be kids, but this is a vehicle that's a little more dangerous too. So what can we do as a community?
So the question is, as a community, how can you guys kind of help engage and assist us in helping you guys to make the city safer? Is that kind of an easy gist of your inquiry? Right. And I'm 100% with you on that aspect of things, because at the end of the day, the damage to the ecosystems that these things can generate, because they're not just doing it here in Ventura, right? They're doing it in other places, in Conejo open spaces and up in Harmon Barranca. They're riding these things around when they shouldn't be and in places that they shouldn't be. And the damage that they create to the trails and the parks and things of that nature is pretty immense. And that ruins it for everybody else that's going and trying to just enjoy their peace and quiet. The best option is just call us when you see it, okay? You know, depending on where we are, time of day, what we're dealing with, I can't always promise that we're gonna be able to be there when it happens, but when you call, what that does is it gives us a relative timeline. And people are creatures of habit, right? And so we may not get them this Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but where are they gonna be next Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Probably in the same spot. And so we can just kind of, all right, this is getting to be consistent and routine, so we'll just go take a look. And my guess would be if they're leaving ruts and damage to the grass in the park, such as you're describing, they're not riding the Super 73s or a Class 1, 2, or 3 bicycle. They're riding the Surons and Talarias. And those are easy to deal with because we just take them because they're not registered. And so we just take them for unexpired registration, or these guys aren't licensed, or they're suspended. Like, we have a lot of leverage with those. We don't have leverage with these to take them, short of a lot of other significant issues. But with the Surons and Talarias, we do. The vehicle, because of where they fit in the space of a vehicle, there's more requirements that they're not abiding by. And so we have leverage in that regard to be able to deal with those vehicles.
Is that a 911 call or an administrative office call?
It would be an administrative office call, unless, of course, somebody's been struck and is injured, then yeah, obviously. But otherwise, it's more of a, hey, this is what's going on, and just kind of get it on record for us, and then they'll get somebody over there when we can get somebody over there. Yes, sir.
Would it help to take a picture or film something to shoot to you guys, or just don't even worry about that, just call the administrator?
Never hurts. I mean, my personal practice when we're dealing with these guys, I just take pictures of them. That way I know if we haven't dealt with them yet, or I've dealt with them once before. Yeah, fool me once, shame on you. Can't fool me again, right? That's just kind of how I deal with it. Like, hey, I've already talked to you. We've already addressed this in one way. You know, maybe we went a little hard in the paint, but like, you're not getting it, and you're gonna end up hurting yourself, somebody else, or worse. And that's not what I'm here for. As you guys see, and I'll tell you till the day is long, like, my first and foremost goal is to make sure that we're not having any of these issues as far as crashes and injuries are concerned. I've seen enough of that. We've been to enough of those. We don't need to deal with anymore. Okay? And the only thing that's going to come from all of this later on down the road is going to be more of the injuries and resultant problems that come from all of that. Yes?
When you, the first time it's a warning and you do the education, are you able to make an attempt to talk to parents as well? Because, you know, I, like everybody else, has witnessed some really scary things, like up on Hill Road or Street or whatever it is.
Foothill?
No, Hill.
Okay.
So, in Montalvo Park area, it's a large hill, there's a couple of roundabouts, and, you know, kids, you know, just riding on the road with traffic. I saw 2 young girls almost die, you know, so are you able to talk to the parents and educate them as well?
So we are, as far as I'm concerned and the majority of the traffic unit's concerned, and I would even go so far as to say staff is concerned, we have more or less exhausted our education efforts. Between social media posts, between the website on the police department's website, and forums such as this. And we're past the point of, we've explained this to you a number of different ways, and we're at the point to where we need to start enforcing things. And that's kind of the approach that we're taking, realistically speaking. You know, reckless behavior on a bicycle is no different than reckless behavior in a vehicle. As far as the vehicle code and case law is concerned, you know, the vehicle code states specifically that all law that applies to a motor vehicle applies the same as it does to a bicycle. DUIs included, reckless operation, you name it. Okay. And the reckless operation thing stems from a guy riding a bicycle in Elysian Park in LA, and he was doing wheelies and he was drunk and he ended up hitting somebody on the sidewalk. And they found that in that case law that the law still applies for reckless operation, same as it does on a bicycle to a car and vice versa. So all of these things we've exhausted in any presentation that we could possibly provide. And we're past we've explained it to you, you need to get on board and be safer and smarter about things. And yeah, we're still reaching out to parents, even if we're citing somebody for whatever the case may be, just to give them a heads up to say, hey, this is what's going on. Or to say, hey, you need to come pick your kid up because he has no wheels to get home. Whatever the case may be. I mean, I stopped and talked to somebody just the other day that they got some misinformation about the vehicle that the kid was riding. Sure, we kind of took that one on face value with what the parents were telling us, because they were given an email from some other agency that they wouldn't explain it, and they never forwarded me said email. Probably don't have it. You know, but that's fine. So, yeah, that's just our general stance at this point, is that we're past all of the other efforts, and it's just enforcement at this point.
Thank you so much. Any other questions before we move on? All right. That was
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're running a little bit late, but I wasn't too concerned because we're going to make the bylaws part very quick, because it's probably going to be the most boring part of the whole evening, right? So, Cassie, are you able to bring up the bylaws? Okay, so I just want to explain. So the Community Council, we have a board. And we have 7 members on our board currently, and then we have the council, who is all of the members of the Montalvo Community Council. So if you are a member of the Montalvo Community Council, then you can vote. Just go to our website and fill out a form. It doesn't cost any money. You'll get on our mailing list, and you'll also get blogs, so it's a good thing. So, perfect. So, so that's where you go. So we have bylaws that we abide by, and the first thing is, as I mentioned earlier, we expanded through a bylaw change probably 2 years ago to include all of District 6. So instead, our council started as just the old Montalvo area. And we expanded to include all of District 6. It goes all the way up to 126 and down to the 101. And there's some tricky boundaries. We have a little bit on the other side of Victoria now, some homes after the districting. So we wanted to include everyone. So what we're suggesting is that we call it the Montalvo Area Community Council. Okay, it's not that super creative, but what we noticed was on the city website, they call it the Montalvo area. So they are including up there by the 126 as Montalvo area. So since they're already including that, we thought, well, that's easy enough. So what we're asking for a vote on tonight is to change it from Montalvo District 6 Community Council, which was MCC, to Montalvo Area Community Council, which is going to be MACC. That'll be our new acronym. Okay, and yes, we have a question. Just the name tonight. Redistricting. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we changed that when it was redistricted, and again, I think that was about 2 years ago. So yeah, right now, tonight, all we're asking for is changing the name from Montalvo Community Council to Montalvo Area Community Council. But there is also another bylaw change, and this one is pretty exciting. So we are the only community council that's currently not considered a nonprofit organization, 501c3. We're one of the newer community councils, so we're just getting to that point where, you know, we helped facilitate the mural that was painted over there. We want to do more of those types of projects, and it was actually difficult because we had to have another community council handle the money, and they said, we'll do it for you this time, but you know, you guys really need to do the paperwork to become a nonprofit. So we've been working on that. In order to do that, we had to clearly state our purpose and some guidelines to be a nonprofit. And our purpose is, and that, can you go up to the very beginning? Because I don't have that memorized. We updated the first paragraph. So the name of this organization will be the Montalvo District Community Council. That's going to change to the Montalvo Area Community Council. Council is established and governed by the provisions set forth in these bylaws. It's intended to qualify as a tax-exempt under Section 501c3. We have to correct that in the Internal Revenue Code. So we're a council of community coalition organized to increase citizen participation in local policy issues and thereby improve the overall quality of life in the Montalvo area in particular, and also in the city of Ventura in general. So it's very simple. We're here to improve participation and increase quality of life. The only other provision in here that we added is if we ever dissolve, any money that we happen to have in our bank account has to go to a charity purpose. So that being said, and all of our members had an opportunity to review that in an email. We sent that out two weeks ago, so everybody had plenty of time. So does anybody have any questions or concerns? Calvin?
My only question is, after you fill out to become a member, you fill out everything and it says you filled it out, is there any other response to be a member, or are you a member after that?
That's it.
You're a member. Yay! Perfect. Thank you. See how easy it is? Very good. So, yeah, so are there any concerns to either of those suggestions? Okay, so of all of the members who are in the room, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, and anyone opposed, please say nay. Okay, no one said nay for the record, so I believe that the vote holds, and so we will now be called the Montalvo Area Community Council, so we can include everybody in our meetings. Thank you very much, and we will start doing some fundraising, and we'd love help if anybody particularly likes to be on those types of committees. All right, so that is done, and the next thing would be public comment, unless you had a question. Okay, well, we'll make a public comment.
When do you officially become a 501c3? Is that paperwork been filed?
We haven't clicked the button to file because we had to get it approved with the bylaws. We are working on the form. It's actually not too difficult. So we think. Yeah, sure.
Once you become a 501c3, there is a ton of resources that are available for free.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so yeah, so we expect that by our next meeting we will be 501c3. Yeah, good. We're wishful thinking. So any other comments, questions that anybody would like to bring up? All right, I don't see any, so then that's it, we're gonna close. So the only other thing that I would like to add is, as a result of having a new name, we're gonna have to have a new logo. So we've tried our pen in creating a new logo. We had a pretty cool logo that somebody created 12 years ago, but we're trying to update it to make it a little bit more current. We are going to have a little contest, so please look for that on social media. Our board meets once a month on the first Tuesday, so we're going to have a little bit further discussion on that, and then we'll submit that out to social media and to our members to vote on They're top choices for our new logo. So thank you, everybody. I think if there are no further questions, then we're going to call this meeting to an end. Thank you to Ventura Police Department for the great presentations that we had tonight. And thanks to everybody for coming. All right, thank you.